Hi, I'm Katrina Laks, CEO and co-founder of Migration, and also the community lead of Fresh Health Founders Estonia. And I'm really excited this week because I have had the utmost pleasure of having Mr. John Collins here in Estonia. He's the founder and master of CIMIT. CIMIT is the Consortium for Medical Innovation and Technology, and has played a key role in connecting academia, industry, and healthcare to accelerate medical innovation globally. Today, during next 30 minutes, we will explore the insights gained from John Collins' work and discuss Estonia's unique position in the next leap of health tech innovation. John will now give us a 10-minute presentation regarding CIMIT, and then we have a Q&A where you also will have the chance to step up through Votemo. So, John, welcome. The floor is yours for the presentation.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. I'll be focusing on innovation in healthcare, but I think a lot of the lessons that we've learned in healthcare apply very broadly. As a matter of fact, the more we learn from different industries, the more we can apply. So what I'm going to talk about is the journey that innovators go through. Let me first have you ask yourself, how many entrepreneurs are there in the audience, by a show of hands? A few. You guys know the secrets. What are the two things that every entrepreneur knows about a startup? The two things. First thing, 90% of startups fail. That's pretty daunting when you think about any process, that 90% of your colleagues as you're starting are going to fail. What's the other thing that they know? Any good entrepreneur knows that they will be the one that succeeds, right? So what do most people do? Well, to listen to the experience of both, to listen to the successful innovators, and I'm going to emulate that model. My personal belief is there's actually more to learn by why do so many of these startups fail, right? So the real question is, why do they fail? There's some great work that's being done by an organization called CB Insights out of California that kind of track the startup world. It's a free web resource. I strongly recommend that you take a look at it. They've done a postmortem of a number of different startups, and they've listed the top reasons that startups fail. So run out of cash, no market need, get outcompeted, they had a bad business model, they run into challenges on legal or regulatory, their pricing isn't competitive, or they don't have the right team. Well, as you look at those, you can ask yourself, all right, what are the root causes of these? These are symptoms, right? They're not root causes. So the first one, I would argue that running out of cash is not a reason for a failure. That's a symptom, right? You don't get cash because you don't have investors, and investors are smart. They invest in smart organizations. Well, the next one is that there's no market need. Why on God's green earth would you develop a product for which there's no market need? Oftentimes, it's because we like to say you can, right? It's what we call tech push. And other times, it's because you believe firmly in your heart that there's a market need, but you've never gone out and validated it. Get out competed? Well, did you really understand what the competitive situation is? Flawed business model? Do you have business experience on your team? You run into regulatory issues. Do you have the requisite experience? Pricing issues? Do you understand the supply chain? Not the right team? Do you have management experience? So as you look at this, as you look at these root causes, what are some of the key observations? I'm a technologist, so I'll give you a hint, right? The lack of science and technology issues causing failures. And you think about, particularly in the medical world, where do the teams spend their time? 90+% is advancing the science and technology, not worrying about the business. The other thing that the observation is, most of the reasons are avoidable with experience, right? So, be curious to reactions to this. Innovation in any industry is hard. There's absolutely no question about it. I would argue, though, that innovation in healthcare is really the Mount Everest of innovation. And there are multiple reasons for that. First is the challenge around buying dynamics. In most industry, the user is the buyer. I want to take a bolt, and I'll decide if the €5 fee is something that I'm willing to pay. In healthcare, it's unclear who makes the buying decisions and how that's made. A lot of people who are operating in hospitals have no idea why the kit they have available is available to them. Who made that decision? And I can only use the things that are available to me. The complexity about reimbursement. In most industries, user pays what something's worth. In healthcare, it's very unclear who pays and how much. What does the government pay? What does self-pay, et cetera? The regulatory pathway, in most industries, there's clearly regulatory burdens. Usually it's pretty straightforward. In healthcare, we spend a lot of time understanding which regulatory pathway we should proceed. It's culture, right? A lot of industries, innovation's great. Yeah, let's give it a try. Why not? Can you imagine if your doctor said that to you, right? So the culture in medicine is no mistakes, don't take a chance. Funding requirements. A lot of industries, you can get a new code going for a few $100,000, at least in the States, maybe to a few million. How does that compare in healthcare? There's some work done, actually this is a little bit dated, this is about almost 10 years old now, that there are two regulatory pathways in the States. One is called the 510K, where there's already a substantial equivalent product in the market. That's $32 million to go introduce a new product. For the pre-market approval pathway, where you've got to do more regulatory work, that's over $90 million. It's huge. Same thing with timelines. I can develop a company and get a product in the market in Silicon Valley in a few months, maybe to a few years, depending on what it is. Same thing in medicine. It's 6.5 years for 510K on average. Clearly there are faster ones and shorter ones. And 10 years for a PMA. So let me ask a question. If you were to try to climb Mount Everest for the first time, what would you do? Probably exercise a lot and get ready. I think the smart people will hire a Sherpa, right, to help you plan the trip. They've been there, they've done that, they know what's available at each one of the base camps because they've been there and they've done that, and they can help you on the journey. And my organization, CIMIT, it's a Boston-based organization. Really, I like to think of it as an innovation Sherpa. So we don't do the work ourselves. We work with great teams in Boston, around the US and around the globe, to really bring the expertise, not typically the science and technical, clinical expertise. The teams usually have that, but we bring the business expertise to help them navigate that journey. So as I mentioned, CIMIT is an organization that's been around for about 25 years. Founded by Mass General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston and MIT in a spinoff. We since then grew to a consortium of all the major teaching hospitals and universities in Boston. We then grew internationally, working in Manchester, the UK, and in Singapore, Barcelona. Groups that say, hey, we've got really great science and clinical expertise, but we're not creating the economic value and patient value that we can. And then more recently, we've been focusing on a lot in the States, where the National Institutes of Health has been focusing more on trying to take the great science and translate that into patient care. And we're really pleased to be starting to work with Health Founders Estonia to help connect the Estonian ecosystem to our growing ecosystem and learn what's going on here and help provide expertise. Just one example of a project that we were responsible for, it's called RADx. In the beginning of the COVID epidemic, we were funded by the NIH to help accelerate the development of at-home diagnostics for COVID. We started that project in April, and we got the first commercial product on the market later that year. Think about it. How do you do that? We had over 1,000 organizations apply to help. We selected 100 organizations, and we had 25 very experienced Sherpas to help them, and we had over 500 external content experts, external consultants helping. And we had 55 FDA authorized tests, the first over-the-counter one, and greater than 7 billion tests. You think about the challenge of building this ecosystem across, in this case it was mostly in the US, building not a geographic ecosystem, but a content ecosystem. And a lot of the infrastructure and tools that we use made that happen. So I could go on and on and on, and I promise that I won't. We very much look forward to learning more about the Estonian ecosystem and connecting it to ours. So.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for, I don't know if it's on there. Nope. I hope everyone can hear me now as well. Perfect. Thank you, John. I really love this Sherpa comparison. That's a great one.
And the nice thing I like about the Sherpa, it keeps the focus on the entrepreneurs and the technologists and the founders, who are really the stars of the show.
Yeah. But John, you have built successful innovation ecosystems through CIMIT before. And now you have been in Estonia for a week and seen us in different situations and have had a lot of talks and know Estonian ecosystem, different layers as well. What do you see as the foundational elements from government policy to the academics to the entrepreneurs and industry partnerships that need strategic alignment and that should be changed?
Well, I've been here for a week, so I'm now an expert on Estonia. No, I'm kidding. I know very little about Estonia, and I'm certainly learning more. One of the things that has really struck me as we've worked, for example, starting about 10 years ago in Singapore, helping them build what is now a very robust medtech system. The same thing in Catalonia, is they had great science and they had great technology, but what they were missing were two things. They were missing the entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I've really picked up is the entrepreneurial spirit here in Estonia is very, very strong. It may not be in the health tech space, but frankly, an entrepreneur can operate in multiple industries, again, bringing in the right set of expertise. I think the other thing, we had the opening day, and 200 people showed up.
Yep.
And the nice thing is the diversity of folks that showed up from industry, from certainly founders, but from government, from insurance. So one of the things that we find that really works is when you connect an ecosystem. And I don't know how well connected the Estonian ecosystem is at this point, but the important thing is the interest is there. And normally our job is to generate the interest and then figure out, connecting was actually pretty easy by developing some common language and understanding of what the process is. So I think frankly Estonia is positioned very well to be able to kind of come together and focus more of its resources on health tech, which provides obviously benefits to the population because you can address specific needs of the Estonian population, as well as frankly creating good paying, high paying jobs.
Yeah, that's true. I think that the spirit is definitely there through every layer to bring the change, and currently seems to be definitely the right time as well through Health Founders Estonia and other initiatives as well. And historically, Estonia has actually built a great foundation through making the choice to be a very digital country and having every single service as digital now. So I think that that kind of is one of the great foundational stones, and
which a lot of other regions are just coming to grips with now. Absolutely.
Yep. But should we develop all layers of our healthcare system also through some kind of strategic model, and how we could actually do it?
Yeah, I'm not a policy guy, but I do think that generally speaking, identifying major themes is something that we've seen work quite well. You can call it strategy, but the strategy tends to be at a pretty high level. I think a lot of percolating underneath makes a lot of sense. But again, I think the key thing that from a overarching perspective are efforts to be able to connect the pieces of the network. Because, and again, each piece has to see the benefit in connecting to that network. Otherwise, one link in that chain breaks and the whole network is not functioning.
Do you have any good examples from the whole wide world?
Yeah, I mentioned you can, as I think a great example, and again, Probably a place that's a little hard to replicate is what's happened in Singapore. Again, that is a very strategic country, and they really, I think, did an amazing job of connecting their network, building, frankly, at the time, the thought of a clinical researcher in Singapore was new. So the idea of building the medical institutions, the universities, to create the new generation of medical researchers, which were required to really support a medtech sector. And I think on the contrary side, our colleagues in Catalonia already had a lot of those resources, but an organization called BioCat really was there. It's an arm of the Economic Development Authority, and their mission has been, again, to connect the network and support growing the ecosystem.
Kind of bottom up.
Very much bottom up, yeah, with all those small startups as well as events to bring the ecosystem together.
Okay. Just in the meantime, I encourage you, everyone in the room, ask the questions through Votimo, because we have the source of information and knowledge on the stage. So please do that. I see the questions coming here on the screen as well. But until then, following on with the talk. John, if we're talking about this strategic partnerships and what should be made, what should Estonia actually prioritize? Would it be this kind of bottom-up approach that we see currently a very good environment for, and we see 200 people actively talking about healthcare on a Tuesday night in a room, or should it be something else?
Well, I think it should be both.
Yep.
I think, building an ecosystem, a lot of things will bubble up, but in the meantime, I personally would argue that you need to look at, what are some of the unique strengths that are operating here in Estonia that you can build on, and importantly, what are the ones that can scale, and obviously scale well outside of Estonia. Obviously, I don't have that answer at this point in time, but I would very much argue that doing the strategic stuff, trying to have the government support that, but then at the same time, not putting as much resources, but making sure that you continue to bubble things up, because great things come from very unexpected sources.
Yeah. So we're very happy that Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs through Enterprise Estonia and Startup Estonia supports Health Founders Estonia as a launchpad for new health tech and life science companies now, and hope this kind of bottom-up approach gets a new wave of going from there. But you talked about Singapore and their developments and Catalonia as well. Estonia is a small size. We call it a country as a test bed. Could this Estonia's small size also become a strategic advantage for rapid testing of this ecosystem model development? Could we be faster somehow? And what could we iterate better than anywhere else?
Yeah, I do think, again, if the focus is on, you've got the various pieces that are in place, and the real challenge is just connecting those pieces. I think, frankly, Estonia being a small country has the advantage that you don't have to connect as many pieces.
Yep.
So I think that's a real advantage that you have. As I gave the example of the RADx Tech,
Yep.
That community was maybe 1,000 people that were involved in creating 7 billion tests in a year.
Okay.
Right? So it's amazing when you get a small number of people who are well connected, what they can actually do. So I think it's a strength.
Yeah. So we could easily bring this change here in Estonia as well.
Oh, absolutely. No question. Obviously, the RADx example is a bit extreme because everyone felt that priority. It was very easy to get people focused on addressing the problem. And again, I think that would be the advantage of some strategic focus to get people energized about something that is seen as helping Estonia, helping patients, and creating growth.
But now we have kind of talked that what could be done, what's positive in Estonia, what are the opportunities. But as we also started in the beginning, you have been here almost a week. Do you see any gaps? Do you see what's missing?
Well, I think to some degree it's the number of entrepreneurs that are in the health tech space. Again, I think the entrepreneurial spirit, if you're doing it in fintech or any other area, applies equally well. I think the other thing, though, that we've found to be lacking is, I'd mentioned the mentors, facilitators that we use. So being a Sherpa, we've got people that have started companies, exited companies, managed companies, et cetera. They are in a position now, financially, career-wise, where they don't have to run their own companies. They're in a position to give back, and they're in a position to help other groups move forward. And that takes some time. So one of the things that we have done is we've created a model that basically helps mentors understand where a project is and helps teams figure out where they need to go from one milestone, so from one base camp to the next camp to the next camp. And what that tool does is it really helps the mentors be much more efficient in quickly understanding where is the team, what are the gaps, where do they need help, and pointing that out. So I would anticipate that mentor role is a role that's probably you're going to need to build in order to be successful in having the Sherpas help all of the new companies out there.
Yep, and I see that this Sherpa and Everest comparison has really reflected in the room as well, as most of the questions I see on the screen are regarding Sherpas.
Yeah.
Could you also explain how you could how could Sherpas navigate failures with founders?
Find them fast.
Okay. they tend to keep finding them faster than the founder themselves alone, right?
Yeah, as we work with teams, typically we find about a third to a half of the teams have some fatal flaws. And if I were to tell you that your startup has a fatal flaw, what would you tell me? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? You'd argue with me. If you discover that your team has a fatal flaw, what do? You stop and you move on. So from an efficiency perspective, we hate for a team to come to a conclusion that they don't have a viable technology, but that's a good result.
Yeah.
Because that allows that team to go off and move onto their next and not spend an extra 2, 3, 4, or 5 years and not being productive.
At some point of time, you have to risk. How to know when you have enough validation to go all in and risk it? And there are ways that you still can go wrong also when you are using a CIMIT model.
Yeah. There's something that a lot of founders would hear, which is irrational persistence, right? I've been told no, I've been told no, I've been told no, but I'm still plowing forward and I'm going to run through that brick wall. We support that mindset, but we like to say practice informed irrational persistence, right? So make sure that you're continuing, if you're hearing the same thing, our experience has been, we really encourage teams to get out of their offices, go out and talk to stakeholders, which is really, that's where the validation is. Not just patients, not just clinicians, but the insurers, everyone involved in the ecosystem. And what we've found is kind of the general rule of thumb. If you hear the same thing in about 7 different settings, that's pretty close to the truth. And it's to say, kind of the joke is that it's okay to pivot, all right, to move from one direction to the next. Just don't pirouette, or sit there and spinning the whole time, and you don't make any progress. So hearing things about 7 different times or in 7 different settings tends to be a pretty good rule of thumb. I'd be curious if that experience holds for others.
Yeah, at least from my side, I can say that CIMIT model helps very well, and this talking to the stakeholders is kind of the most essential thing that a startup company has to do, especially in the clinical system.
Yeah, and I'd actually like to change my language a little bit, because too often, what do entrepreneurs do? They talk to stakeholders. They don't listen to stakeholders. So we very much encourage our teams to do exploratory interviews. I know it's really hard. You've got a technology. You're excited about the technology. You want to tell all these people how great it is, and you don't listen. So we very much encourage our teams not to go in and talk about their technology, but it's to go in and understand from what's your perspective, Mr. Stakeholder. What are you worried about? If you find that the thing that you're focused on is not even listed in the top 2 or 3 things that they're worrying about, that tells you something. If you ask them, are you worried about X, Y, or Z, they'll say sure, right? They'll give you an answer, and that's kind of confirmation bias. So practice open-ended questions. There's some great resources on the CIMIT website. There's some great books that are written about how to do these exploratory interviews. And frankly, it's hard for a lot of smart people to do these exploratory interviews because they're so used to being the expert and telling people that they're just not listening to the feedback. And that's dangerous. Why? Because you think you're getting honest feedback from stakeholders and you're making your decisions based on what you think is good data, where it's really flawed data.
And I suggest asking for advice as well from the stakeholders.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yep.
Also one question from the room, and especially good to have it in Estonia. John, are big countries harder to convince in innovation than small countries? What's your experience?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Are big countries harder to convince in innovation than smaller countries?
Are big countries?
Yes.
I don't know. I think, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have enough data to say.
I think that's very solution specific also.
Probably. I think a lot of innovations are point solutions. They're not ecosystem based, which are easier then to implement in any setting. Things that are more system wide are much more challenging to implement in larger settings.
It's a mindset thing.
Or just infrastructure thing. You got to get more people to agree. If you got 2 people on a dais, you got 10 different opinions. So.
Yep. John, we have to start wrapping up. Thank you for all your insights, all the answers to the questions from the room as well, and seeing Estonia's potential as a country for healthcare innovation. But do you have any final thoughts that you would like to give Estonian entrepreneurs and health tech entrepreneurs as well?
Yeah, the health tech entrepreneurs in particular, CIMIT's a nonprofit organization. Our mission in life is to help you be successful. We've tried to put a lot of resources on our website. And in particular, there's a website, gaits.org, where a lot of the tools that we've developed are available. There are checklists there for how we recommend that you go from uncovering an unmet need to becoming a standard of care. And if you've got questions, my email is there. I'd love to hear from you and get feedback and talk about what you're doing.
Thank you, John. John Collins from CIMIT.
Thank you.
And thank you all from Health Founders Estonia.